Hey everyone, Shade Raven here, coming from my wife's PC with a revisit to the Drag and Drop Barbarian because over the last few days, took a closer look at what might make it a little bit easier to apply the the class in the Drag and Drop series. As I was looking to work through all of them, and while it is always a good idea to get a good grasp on how to do things like effects, create spell classes, on your actions tab and all of that. All of those skills, going through the different wiki pages, the trend low, and even in some of the core RPG rules that you could see out there. There's a lot of very useful tools out there to learn if you really want to get to mastering everything you do in Fantasy Ground Unity. And believe me, there's a lot to master. I know I'm not even close to getting there myself. But in this case, one of the things I thought about is how people that maybe are just getting into playing, creating characters, and using some of the more enhanced things to get effects applied to the combat tracker, how it might make it a little bit easier for them. So I took a second look at the Barbarian, which I just come out with recently, and certainly everything is in there that really should get anybody started. But I decided to come out with a new version here that'll be released to see what people think about actually even making, adding even more enhancement to the use of this drag and drop series. So we can see the screen here that we're used to. Again, I keep the drag and drop actions and skills open because Barbarian does reference a few things out of that, like uh, demoralize, how to apply effects to different creatures and stuff like that. Just some different, and some of the athletic skill checks and stuff that you might want to be able to use on a character sheet. But most of the meat comes inside of obviously the drag and drop Barbarian for anyone interested in playing the Barbarian. The first thing you might notice that jumps out at you is that there's a new classes section to the Barbarian. So, and that's really the gist of what this new version is going to offer, is that when you're creating a character, I now have a class that pulls in that information in. It's essentially the same, everything you get out of the Pathfinder Second Edition core rules, specific to the Barbarian and those that need action enhancements to it. Uh, it obviously doesn't have anything close to everything you get out of the core rules, but for the Barbarian class, just for the creation and advancement of it, this is this gives you, mostly what you need out of it. So it'll still, pull up a few things like your class kits. You'll still want to have the Pathfinder Second Edition rules ready for that. I'm not going to do all the other things that the Second Edition rulebook gives you, but I am trying to make the class self-contained in there, so that all the enhancements that are coming with the Drag and Drop series can be pulled more directly without having to make any extra effort towards it. The best way to explain that, though, is to pull up a character and show you the creation of one and what using the drag and drop Barbarian does instead of the other one. Again, you can get all this stuff without using it by just pulling that information out of the spells tab, like anybody who's used any of the other drag and drop series. But for people who want maybe even a step easier in the process, that's what this will do. So let's start and create a character. So you come in here as usual, you want to add an M character selection, and we'll just start out with, Thrud, the Barbarian. Typical thing, not going to worry too much about icons and stuff, but in general, you come in here and you see your usual process here with the amazing tracker that lets you go through and create characters with so much more ease in the second edition rules of Pathfinder. So just to make things easier, I'm not like looking to dig into too deeply on some of the other stuff. There's some great videos on character creation out there, but we'll just take something that's fairly easy to use, um, trying to get to the barbarian itself. So I'll just say, pull in a dwarf. I decided I want to be a rock dwarf, let's say. And the usual thing, grab a skill we want to increase. So it applies those aspects from the Dwarven class. Again, down here, normally you'd say grab an ancestry feed. I guess I could do that just to say this is what we normally do, and he's taking stone cutting. We come to background. Again, for ease of use, just going to grab acrobat. Say he's going to be a strong acrobat, kind of the guy in those tights or whatever that are standing out in the middle of the arena lifting heavy things, and tossing them about. Take Constitution, and again, what we're looking for is just to get to the Barbarian, because this is what we really want to talk about here. So we got class. So we got our tights wearing Dwarven Barbarian ready uh, to begin his career as, a battle rager. So, and now you'll see in the list of available classes, now there's a one called Barbarian D&D for drag and drop. Essentially everything you're used to from the Barbarian class, the information and all that will be there, uh, put in to show everything you got. This section under the drag and drop is going to all look the same. There are some differences in here to get what I want to do to work as we go along. Some automation that's been added in. Explain that a little bit because there is a little bit of trickery with something that has a secondary sort of selection that identifies the class. So in this case, it'll be instincts. But that's what we're pulling up. So you grab your Barbarian, the D&D version. And again, if you took this one, you could still find everything you did in the normal drag and drop series and just pull it in and drop it into a spell class section you create. This one is going to start creating some of that stuff for you. So let's go ahead and take the Barbarian drag and drop. Again, you'll be used to seeing different things. The instincts pop up as you come in to choose this. This one has, the usual all the way up to those superstition instinct you get from the advanced player's guide. Doesn't matter much, but I'm going to pick one that's a little more complicated because it'll help show what you're going to be looking at down the line as some of the extra automation I put in comes into play when you get to things like weapon specialization, raging resistance, and the greater weapon specialization. So we'll grab Dragon Instinct in this case, since there's more varied options for the draconic side of the Barbarian than any other ones. Although Animal does have, the animal you choose, and it would come up with the same sort of selection table for you to look through as well. But for now, we're going to take the Dragon Instinct. And now in this is one of the first things that we're seeing a difference in. The listing of the different Dragon Instincts are available currently as the base. Now, obviously, anybody wants to create their own, or using some rare type of stuff, you'd sort of follow the same the same format to create that. But for anybody using just sort of the core rules, you'll now see a Dragon Instinct specific for this type of Barbarian. In this case, let's say, I'd actually like to be, a silver metallic cone of cold type of one. Like the idea of having that kind of good dragon in the past. And again, you'll see just the kind of the base things you see there with some of the choices that'll come in, so you mark that. So this does have automation, and that's what I was showing here. This is where the first real point of change happens in this new Barbarian drag and drop, and that is it'll start to add in the spell class to create it on your character sheet, so that you don't have to go to the back actions page to create a spell class for your Barbarian to pull in this information out of the spells tab for these different actions. So when we select this silver dragon instinct, we'll now see a new class and the new spell action added to this character, along with the other automation stuff that comes with it. So now you see Draconic Rage Cold is now pulled into this character, and you'll get the summary here, which then shows you your usual 4 points of Draconic Cold damage for melee attacks with the usual -1 AC, and your temporary hit points, which is, if you want to look at it a little more drilled down, see it's your class level and your con modifier. As you go up, as usual, you'll have to modify the character level here to make sure some of the stuff matches up, at least especially on the temporary hit point side of things. But now what this new version does is it actually creates this Barbarian innate feature section, and it'll pull these spells that are emulating the action powers onto the character sheet, put it in the back of the page, and then have that readily available for you. And that's really kind of the first step in creating a little more automation on this side of the Barbarian. And again, you'll be able to see that if you were to pull up the classes, you'll see that the Barbarian here gets this instinct thing, and this is where it comes up and chooses the instincts off of the Barbarian drag and drop series. So that's really what I'm introducing into this particular version, and I wanted to give it so that you like kind of pull this information in. It gets a little tricky later on because it's hard to kind of keep track of the fact that you've taken a silver dragon along the line, although at least there'll be reminders here that you have a silver dragon instinct here that showed how that was pulled in along with the anathema and the normal dragon instinct details if you want to go look all of that stuff up in the base rules for barbarian instincts to begin with. And that's where we start to pull this information in. So if we were to come in and finish off this character, just say that's he wants to be able to rage and stuff. This is if you want to do default equipment, again, this is where you still need the core rule book to be able to get all this stuff in, pop it in, and you'll see, oh, that did not work. I'll have to take a peek at that. Maybe that has to be set up specifically this. All right, so there's something to look at down the line, but that's the goal here, is to pull this stuff in. I'll take a peek at that other one, see why I'm not getting the added inventory off of this. But all of that now comes through here. Now, as the other part of this that I said where it gets a little trickier is as I advanced the characters and levels, I set up some more automation to deal with things down the line. Now, as we look at the usual things you see pop up, we got to pick up some skills, 3 skills and a barbarian feat, which would be part of the normal process where I'd sit there and say, well, he definitely wants to be intimidating, very typical for a barbarian. We know he's already acrobatic and athletic from his previous stuff. This barbarian wants to be able to sneak along when he needs to. And this third one, he's kind of grown up in the Conan mode and likes to occasionally make do in society by working as a kind of hired hand, or just being able to pickpocket or sleight of hand things to make life a little bit easier for him. So then you get kind of your basic normal setup, and then you start to go, well, now we have the class thing. And this is the next thing I want to talk about when it comes to the drag and drop series. The ones that have the automation set to it, you will see in here. And so there'll be some here that are doubled up, like Moment of Clarity. That comes from the drag and drop series. And you can see the automation set for it. And that now, if you take this, because this is an action power, it will pull in that action spell onto your character sheet now so that it's automatically added. The same thing, well, Adrenaline Rush has that same thing, increases your bulk limits, creates something as a reminder to let you know that when you're in your rage, you'll have these additional bonuses. And that's where you're going to see some of the additional what I want to say, additional automation set to it. So if you wanted to take sudden charge, for example, and maybe I'll set up a source here to let it show that you can see, something that will indicate that it's a drag and drop series. Maybe I'll put a D and D in front of these so you could see them. And but in as you go along, if you choose the ones out of this, and we choose sudden charge here, we'll now have that feature added to your actions tab. And now you can see under your actions here, you have sudden charge letting you know, hey, when I come here, I could see as I live on my actions table that there's a 2 action version of sudden charge here, which gives me the details on what I can do with that. And that's the goal here, is that as you're on your back page in your actions tab, which is where, a lot of times during, especially during combat, adventuring and stuff, characters spend a lot of their time. You'll be able to see those actions that include, um, an action cost or things that are related to combat scenarios, combat encounters. So again, this stuff will still be pulled up here. We'll definitely take a look at making it a little clearer when you hit the tab on which things come from the drag and drop series, so you can see that easily and proceed from there. Again, though, like I said, as we're going along, I wanted to set things up to even continue this even as you get it deeper into levels. But that's where it becomes a little bit tricky. So we'll look at this. We know we have a cold-based draconic barbarian. And as you go up a levels, you'll get your usual, add another barbarian feat, skill feat. And again, as you come into class, you'll see some of these new ones that'll be coming from the yeah, I guess I don't have all the books open. All I have is the basic. That's why you'll see just this Advanced Players Edition from the Drag and Drop series. And we'll again see that if we take Bashing Charge at this level, voila, now Bashing Charge has been added to the back sheet with the, showing you your 1 roll bonus on, skill checks for forcing open things as a reminder, other than the usual skill checks. And again, I don't have all the books open because I don't want to clutter this up. But you would, as usual, come in, choose something, and apply. And as I go along, as the Drag and Drop series continues to expand, maybe we'll see things that also have, actionable items from general skills, ancestries, and stuff. Might roll that in. A lot of it depends on timing, because we all know that trend levels working hard and adding more things to this along the lines, and at some future date, either this will be unnecessary as that gets added to like a new, maybe, kind of skill actions tab, or can be rolled into that, so it continues to work with all the good stuff that Trendle comes out with. But again, we've gotten through that. You had another level. This one, because it had one automated that was already a part of the Barbarian Deny Advantage, that kind of pops now onto your tabs to let you know what happens. What does this add? Deny Advantage. Just tells you aren't flat-footed. I thought that one, even though it doesn't really have an action to it, it's so important for combat as a reminder of what's available to barbarians, that I put in automatically to pull into your innate features. Again, we'll do the skill increases. Honestly, at this stage, kind of want to get to the greater things. Hopefully by now everybody has a good idea on how to create characters and add features and stuff to it. So you would come through, put a good general feat. I guess it's not the hardest thing to do. Just say, oh, we'll take additional lore and go on, do a skill increase like you would normally do when you're working your way through, decide to become an expert in intimidation. And then we go up to another level. And again, Barbarian feat number 3. Again, the more important one is it pulls in some of these class things. Again, you'll see some of the ones that have now been added from the different guides. I even put in some things that came from some of the books or sources that aren't like this Farabolous Flip. It is an uncommon one, so it's not one you would necessarily normally have available. It's certainly one you'd have to discuss with the GM and whether or not it was possible to get, or what you would need to do as a member of Pathfinder Society, or however the GM wants to handle it. But that's in here, so if you decided, hey, yeah, he's allowing me to have it, I'm going to add this in. And again, you'll now see, once you select that feat, it pulls in this Farabolous Flip here with, you'll know, as a reaction, and it kind of tells you what you get, AC 2 to your armor class, and explains how it is actually applied and the step that comes with it and all that. So once again, you're advancing along. These new things are now being automatically populated into your Barbarian innate features, and you continue to go up levels. again, trying to get to the stage where you get to see the one that are really, the places that are really have, salient points on. We have to be a little bit aware of how you've created your character. So we've gone to fifth, coming up sixth, Barbarian feat. Again, just kind of blowing through this stuff, but you'll see the same sort of things available. Say you decide to want an attack of opportunity, you now see that listed here on as a reaction, so your character can be reminded, oh yeah, this barbarian does have reactions of that. And now we get to the big one, which is the level 7 one. The first point where it takes, there's a little trickiness to get the pull in the information because it's hard. Right now, I don't think there's really a way for me to currently have a marker that lets me know what your initial selection is so that I could pull in the information automatically for a later date. Now, if there is a way of doing that, I'd be more than happy to apply that. But right now, I couldn't find a way to do this cleanly. So I'll show you what I came up with for now until there's a better solution, or someone shows me something that I could make this even easier for you. But let's go to level 7. One of the first places where you have the next step in and how rage and the barbarian's core abilities start to be affected. And so now we're looking at the instinct specialization for that, because we've taken draconic. So this is one of the areas you have to remember, because if you throw an animal in here, it's going to try to give you an animal instinct specialization. It doesn't really work because you've already taken draconic, but because I couldn't have a marker that would automatically know that it had the dragon instinct chosen, I just pull up a list and let you remember which one you've done, and then grab that instinct that you had started with and pull in the specialization ability. So in this case, we'll take dragon instinct. Now this one is even a little more complicated because once you'd chosen your dragon, it also had a division amongst the dragons on what their abilities then would be applied as. So a cold specialist, which we were with a silver dragon, we can see that back here, we've been using this cold rage all along, is different than acid, electricity, fire, or poison. So again, referring back to what your character has taken all along, you now take the cold specialization for this dragon instinct. And when you add that, now you see your draconic rage for cold specialization. And the reason this is important to remember, because it enhances what your original draconic rage was. It's in essence going to eliminate this one down here because it's no longer applicable because you have a better version of it. And in the specialization of a cold dragon, it talks about you now deal additional damage compared to what you used to do for being an expert or master or legendary in those skills. And those will be now applied. Well, this is for the specialization ability from 4 to 8 on your rage damage. And this gets applied here, which you'll now notice you get the same temporary hit points. Well, technically speaking, you'd be level 7. You get the same temporary hit points that you would have gotten from the original rage. But where the old one was damage 4 cold, this one now becomes damage 8 cold as you hit your specialization ability. There's also some automation in this up in the combat tab, which now shows you your weapon specializations for expert. I put a little note in there in case for some reason or another you're using a weapon that doesn't fall into expert. You'll need to have to be able to turn that off. Or let's say, as you advance, you get the master, and then it's got to be, you're going to want to use the expert version of, say you had an uncommon weapon that you were only an expert in rather than a master in. That's all kind of separate. For the most part, you're probably going to have most people using their most effective weapon groups and their weapons, but that'll be handled on an individual case-by-case situation. And that's something you'll learn to turn on and off different character effects as they do or don't apply. But the idea here is to get most of the information in there from most useful situations and then be able to apply from there. And in this case, like I said, because you have a newer upgraded version of the draconic rage, you can get rid of this old one, technically speaking, because it's no longer applicable because you now have a better version of rage with the additional damage. And so having gotten through that, again, there might be skill increases stuff at this stage. I think everybody has an idea on how to apply different feats and stuff. I'm just going to continue to walk down through because you're going to have another decision point. Again, you would be able to pick up another Barbarian feat, same situation where you're looking at it. New ones that now have, let's say you wanted follow-up assault, that get added to this growing list of abilities you can use in combat for different situations. And now we get to the next one. It's going to be just what you saw before. You're going to add a class level. You're going to have to remember you're a dragon instinct, because this one now is the instinct resistance that comes with it. There's a raging resistance that's individual for each of the different types of instincts. So in this case, again, we have the dragon instinct. And again, we're looking back and recalling what this particular build is, because each one of these are different. Piercing and acid, piercing and cold, piercing electricity, etc., etc., etc. You pull in, say this is a cold instinct. We have our silver dragon one. And again, now it adds a new field that basically is going to be replacing the old one. We had this cold specialization here, which did the 8 damage and 11 temporary. Now we still have the 8 damage, the minus AC, but now we have the resist 3 plus con modifier to piercing and cold that comes with draconic resistance, raging resistance at 9th level based on which instinct, and in this case instinct with a specific dragon type that comes with it. So again, you would be replacing that old one, and now you have everything wrapped up nicely into one rage field that you can apply to this character as you're going along with the temporary hit points as you continue to increase your character level that would apply to that. Again, I'm just going to plow through these. Our very charming angry barbarian in his tights continues along his levels. And I'm not going to bother with the usual stuff. We're going to get to level 15. Again, this is the greater specialization. I'm just going to look at the stuff specific to our dragon instinct. You add that. You come up and say, oh yeah, I got a greater instinct for the cold silver dragon. And that gets that. Let's get this out of the way for your stats increase. And then greater specialization add. Did I mess up the wording on that? I might have to double check that before we go. Let's look at the spells. This should have then added a greater resistance to this, which it gets certainly fixed because we've seen that work all along. So it would come down, and then again, like the previous ones, this greater weapon specialization added the master damage effect, which comes with this as well. And then it was supposed to add instinct greater choice. Oh yeah, it came after the choice, which we then said is the greater specialization. There it is. Should have added the Dragon Rage Cold greater specialization. I'll have to look in here. We'll fix this up. You'll be able to see the Barbarian Dragon drop and see what we got in there. Draconic. Oh, I put in Dragon Rage instead of Draconic Rage. Oh, there you go. So I changed that wording. And what it will do when it's right, or when I put in Dragon Rage, however I set it up, it'll then automatically pull this in when the final fixed version comes in. And now this will apply here because I don't have those two matching up by the same name. And that would have been put in here. This is an example how you can put it in by hand. And now you'll have this automatically pulled in, which is the cold greater specialization, which will increase based on the greater specialization. So if you look there, you can see it's now 16 cold melee damage, but it still has the resist from this part of it, along with with everything else is supposed to come along with this, and it adds in all the other features and stuff so that your rage continues to be updated for each version as we go along. I will make sure that I get the naming convention lined up so the automation pulls that in. But you get an idea as you're going through and picking feats, which those I actually was pretty careful making sure they all lined up as you're going along, and you're picking up class feats all along. This will continue to have all sorts of automation added to this. When you take an awesome blow, for example, you will now see that the awesome blow um, action is there. This is one of the ones I talked about, why I have the actions and skills tab open, so you can see what the rules are on athletic shoves. You can pull in there, and even if you take this, if you decide you'd like to have the ability to use this as part of your character, you could pull it on to this, and now you can see you do the shove, which knocks on a critical. When someone is trying to resist it, they you have a critical fail, you fall prone trying to shove somebody, you lose your balance and fall. The automation for that is in there, plus the rules on it. The same thing with the trip aspect, which has different aspect rules to it. So if you wanted to use a trip where you critics succeed, you can knock them prone and do damage to your target. And then if you critically fail, you fall prone yourself, which is why it's set to self. But that's in essence, as you go through using the new drag and drop series, it's going to populate this Barbarian innate features instead of having to go to the spells tab and dig up the ones you're now using. So that's the intent. Hopefully it adds a little more pizzazz or a little more ease to the use of the class for people, especially getting new into it, maybe not as familiar with adding class features and powers to your back sheet to kind of get used to seeing them and using the effects. Certainly want to continue to expand on some of the stuff. There's a ton of barbarian feats, to be honest, that have, if we go into the spells section and look at the drag and drop barbarian, um, you could see there are a lot in here, 3 pages worth, that I could set up for some automation effects on the actions tab for use in gameplay to hopefully make things just a little more useful or a little easier to refer to on what powers you might have while playing a barbarian. So I know this is a departure from some of the previous versions. Certainly I folded more into this. Anyone not interested in using the Barbarian drag and drop version can certainly use the original Barbarian version and just come into the spells tab, who still want to work with just pulling them over as you see fit. You could do that from here with a regular Barbarian class. You took Tangle of Battle, you come in the spells, find that and drop it in here, and now you have the reference action for um, that particular power that a barbarian gets. But for anybody looking to have maybe just a little easier, smoother flow when it comes to creating and leveling up a character, specifically in this case barbarian, I've tried that. Now if it seems well received and people see real value added to that, then we will definitely I will definitely make an effort to continue to go in this direction as I work into the next. I think I'm working on Bard when I came back and reviewed this, working down through the classes to make the drag and drop kind of all in one class in this drag and drop series a little easier to play and a little easier to have reference to as you're going along the game. So again, a little bit longer on this one, but I thought there was a little more to explain. I hope those of you that enjoy the drag and drop series, I hope you find value in this and it makes your gameplay a little bit easier. Feel free to rate this. Throw in donations if you are so inclined, and otherwise enjoy this, because that is the bottom line. Do this so that all of us who love Pathfinder 2 can do so with the greatest pleasure and ease as possible. Till next time.